August 6th and 9th, 1945. 2 atomic bombs destroy Hiroshima and Nagasaki, sinking a combined total of 28 Japanese ships. But there was one American weapon that had already sunk 71 ships by that point. Not a superweapon, not a secret technology. Just one aircraft carrier that refused to die, USS Enterprise CV-6. The Japanese High Command studied the numbers with disbelief. How could a single ship, one they'd reported destroyed multiple times, inflict more damage than the most powerful weapons ever created? Let me put Enterprise's combat record into perspective. 71 ships sunk outright, 192 additional vessels damaged or destroyed, 911 enemy aircraft obliterated, 20 battle stars earned. While the atomic bombs at Hiroshima sank 5 ships and Nagasaki claimed 23, Enterprise had systematically dismantled Japanese naval power, one engagement at a time, over nearly 4 years of continuous combat. 3 days after Pearl Harbor, Enterprise drew first blood when her aircraft located submarine I-70 and sent it to the bottom with all hands. The Japanese submarine force had expected to operate freely in Hawaiian waters, picking off crippled American vessels. Instead, Enterprise established a pattern that would define the entire war: appear where least expected, strike with devastating precision, vanish before retaliation could arrive. Commander Tamon Yamaguchi, one of Japan's most aggressive carrier commanders, remarked that Enterprise possessed a sixth sense for finding Japanese forces at their most vulnerable moments. November 13th, 1942, north of Savo Island. The battleship Hiei, pride of the Imperial Navy since 1914, had survived countless engagements, her massive armor designed to withstand anything thrown at her. Enterprise's Avengers pressed home their torpedo attacks with relentless accuracy. 5 to 8 torpedo hits. Bomb strikes from Army B-17 seconds. Within hours, Hiei became Japan's first battleship loss of the war. Admiral Yamamoto, receiving the report aboard his flagship, exploded in rare public anger, not just because Japan lost a battleship, but because of WHO sank her. Enterprise. Always Enterprise. The naval battles around Guadalcanal in November 1942 showcased Enterprise's lethal efficiency. Over 3 savage nights of fighting, her aircraft shared in sinking 16 Japanese ships and damaging 8 more. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Captain Tamichihara, commanding destroyer Udachi during the battle, later wrote that Enterprise aircraft appearing at dawn seemed like demons rising from hell, striking ships that had survived the night surface actions only to face destruction from above. The mathematics were devastating. One American carrier had virtually destroyed Japan's hopes of retaking Guadalcanal, inflicting losses equivalent to what an entire fleet would struggle to achieve. By 1943, Enterprise had developed her killing system to perfection. During the Gilbert and Marshall Islands campaigns, her air groups methodically destroyed shore installations, shipping, and aircraft with industrial efficiency. Commander Yasuna Kozono, leading fighter defenses in the Marshalls, noted his pilots had become reluctant to engage Enterprise's aircraft, believing the ship somehow endowed them with supernatural protection. The reality was more prosaic, but equally demoralizing. Enterprise's air group had become the most experienced and lethal in the Pacific, with pilots who'd survived over a year of combat against increasingly green Japanese replacements. June 1944, the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Admiral Ozawa commanded 9 Japanese carriers against 15 American, hoping numbers might finally overwhelm Enterprise. Instead, American fighters, many from Enterprise, slaughtered 365 Japanese aircraft while losing only 29. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot ended Japan's carrier aviation as an offensive force. Lieutenant Zenji Abe, one of few surviving Japanese pilots, reported that Enterprise's fighters seemed to anticipate every Japanese move, appearing exactly where needed to break up attack formations. In his after-action report, Admiral Ozawa specifically noted Enterprise's role, observing that this single ship had been present at every major Japanese defeat from Midway onward, a malevolent spirit that seemed to embody American determination. October 1944, the largest naval battle in history. Vice Admiral Kurita commanded the center force, including super battleship Musashi, which Japanese propaganda proclaimed the most powerful battleship ever built. Enterprise's aircraft found Kurita first. Multiple bomb and torpedo hits sent Musashi to the bottom, Japan's final desperate weapon destroyed by the ship they couldn't kill. Japanese naval intelligence compiled the numbers after each battle, and the statistics were staggering. Enterprise's toll: 71 ships sunk, 192, damaged or destroyed, 911 aircraft destroyed. 28 ships sunk, concentrated in 2 locations, single devastating strikes. The psychological difference was equally devastating. The atomic bombs came at the war's end, shocking, final blows, but Enterprise inflicted her damage over 1,400 days of continuous combat, appearing again and again like a nightmare Japanese forces couldn't wake from. Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki, Yamamoto's chief of staff, wrote that Enterprise seemed protected by fate, always appearing where needed, always surviving what should have been fatal damage. He calculated Japanese forces had dropped over 1,000 bombs and fired dozens of torpedoes at Enterprise. The psychological impact of this single ship on Japanese planning and morale was, Ugaki concluded, worth several divisions of troops. Captain Toshikazu Omei, a Japanese naval strategist, found that Japan allocated approximately 30% more air resources to operations where Enterprise was suspected to be present, a disproportionate response that weakened Japanese efforts elsewhere. Admiral Soemu Toyoda, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet in 1945, told his staff that Enterprise seemed protected by American gods, immune to every weapon Japan possessed. Even kamikaze attacks, the ultimate expression of Japanese warrior spirit, couldn't sink her. When Lieutenant Shunsuke Tomiyasu's kamikaze struck Enterprise on May 14, 1945, the ship survived yet again, ending her combat career not in destruction, but in another resurrection. The atomic bombs were devastating weapons that helped end the war. But in terms of pure naval destruction, USS Enterprise CV-6 was the most lethal weapon in the Pacific. She participated in nearly every major battle from Pearl Harbor to Okinawa. She outlived every Japanese carrier that started the war. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shokaku, Zuikaku, all gone. Enterprise remained. Admiral Kita Saburo Nomura, former Japanese ambassador to the United States, reviewing the war after surrender, identified Enterprise as the single most important American ship in the Pacific War, not just for her combat record, but for her psychological impact. The atomic bombs ended the war with terrible finality, but Enterprise won the war one battle at a time, one ship at a time, appearing from the Pacific mists to strike before vanishing again, leaving only burning wreckage in her wake. 20 battle stars. More ships sunk than both atomic bombs combined, more aircraft destroyed than most nations achieved with their entire air forces. And through it all, Enterprise survived everything Japan threw at her. She was, in every sense, the most feared weapon the Imperial Japanese Navy ever faced. Not a doomsday device, but something perhaps more terrifying, a ship that simply would not die, no matter how many times they reported her destroyed. The Grey Ghost, the ship Japan couldn't sink, the weapon more destructive than the atom bomb. Tokyo, Imperial Navy Headquarters, January 1943. Commander Masatake Okumiya sat surrounded by combat reports, reconnaissance photographs, and interrogation transcripts from captured American pilots. His assignment was simple in theory, impossible in practice: predict where USS Enterprise would strike next. For 6 months, Okumiya had tracked every reported sighting, every engagement, every claim of damage inflicted on the American carrier. His wall map bristled with colored pins marking Enterprise's known positions. The pattern should have revealed something: operational preferences, refueling schedules, vulnerability windows. Instead, the map told a story that defied naval logic. Enterprise appeared simultaneously too far north and too far south. She launched strikes from positions that should have been impossible given her last confirmed location. Japanese pilots reported attacking her in the Solomons, while reconnaissance aircraft photographed her near the Gilberts on the same day. "It's as if there are three of her," Okumiya muttered to his assistant, Lieutenant Hiroshi Nishizawa. "Or she can move at speeds our intelligence says is impossible." The truth was simpler but equally frustrating. American damage control had become so effective that Enterprise could sustain hits that would cripple Japanese carriers, make emergency repairs at sea, and return to combat within days rather than months. Japanese planning assumed damaged carriers would withdraw to Pearl Harbor or the West Coast for repairs, a round trip requiring weeks out of action. Enterprise refused to follow these assumptions. Hit at the Eastern Solomons in August 1942, she was back in action by September. Damaged at Santa Cruz in October, she supported the Guadalcanal campaign by November. Every Japanese operational plan that factored in her temporary absence proved wrong within days. What most Western accounts overlook is Enterprise's devastating impact on Japanese submarine operations. Between December 1941 and August 1945, her aircraft sank or damaged 23 Japanese submarines, nearly 10% of Japan's entire submarine fleet. The loss of I-70 on December 10, 1941, was just the beginning. Lieutenant Commander Shibata Koichi, commanding submarine I-19, recorded in his diary the growing fear among Japanese submarine captains of operating anywhere near reported American carrier forces. "We are ordered to patrol Hawaiian approaches," Shibata wrote in March 1942, "but every captain knows Enterprise's aircraft hunt us with uncanny precision. I-70 never had a chance. Neither did I-73 or I-168. They find us on the surface. They find us submerged. It's as if their aircraft can see through the ocean itself." Shibata's fears were well-founded. Enterprise's pilots had pioneered anti-submarine tactics using radar-equipped Avenger torpedo bombers. What seemed like supernatural detection to Japanese submariners was actually the first operational use of airborne radar for submarine hunting technology. Japan's submarines had no counter for. By mid-1943, Imperial Navy submarine doctrine explicitly warned against surface operations within 300 miles of Enterprise's suspected location. This massive exclusion zone crippled Japanese submarine effectiveness across vast swaths of the Pacific, denying them opportunities to intercept American supply convoys and troop transports. Captain Mochitsura Hashimoto, who would later command the submarine that sank USS Indianapolis, studied Enterprise's anti-submarine record extensively. He concluded that one American carrier had rendered Japanese submarines combat ineffective across operational areas larger than the entire Mediterranean Sea. While Enterprise's destruction of Japanese warships garnered headlines, her systematic annihilation of Japanese merchant shipping proved equally devastating to Japan's war effort. Between 1942 and 1945, Enterprise's aircraft sank or damaged 47 Japanese merchant vessels, tankers, and supply ships, over 180,000 tons of shipping. To put this in perspective, Japan's entire merchant marine in 1941 totaled approximately 6 million tons. Enterprise alone accounted for roughly 3% of all merchant shipping Japan lost during the war. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Commander Toshikazu Ome, assigned to analyze shipping losses for the Naval General Staff, identified a disturbing pattern. Wherever Enterprise operated, merchant ship losses spiked dramatically. During the Solomons campaign, her aircraft sank 12 transports attempting to reinforce Guadalcanal. In the Marianas, she destroyed 8 tankers carrying fuel from the Dutch East Indies. Enterprise doesn't just attack military targets, Ome reported to his superiors in June 1944. Her pilots hunt anything that floats under our flag, every tanker, every transport, every supply vessel. She's strangling our logistics as effectively as our battleships are being destroyed. The economic impact was staggering. Japan imported 90% of its oil, and Enterprise's attacks on tankers in the Central Pacific forced Japanese convoys to take longer, less efficient routes. A tanker that survived Enterprise's hunting ground still consumed more fuel on the extended voyage than it saved by avoiding her. Captain Atsushi Oi, a post-war Japanese naval historian, calculated that Enterprise's attacks on merchant shipping cost Japan approximately 400,000 tons of fuel oil, enough to operate the combined fleet for nearly 6 months. One carrier had inflicted economic damage equivalent to cutting off Japan's oil supplies for half a year. Enterprise's impact extended beyond ships afloat to airfields and shore installations. Her aircraft destroyed or damaged 37 Japanese airfields between 1942 and 1945, cratering runways, destroying hangars, and obliterating fuel dumps and ammunition storage. The attack on Kwajalein Atoll in December 1943 exemplified Enterprise's destructive capability. Her air groups conducted 3 days of sustained strikes, destroying 83 aircraft on the ground, damaging runways beyond immediate repair, and demolishing fuel storage facilities that contained over 250,000 gallons of aviation gasoline. Lieutenant Commander Yoshio Shiga, commanding fighter defenses at Kwajalein, watched helplessly as Enterprise's dive bombers systematically destroyed his command. "They attacked with precision we couldn't match," Shiga later wrote. "Each aircraft knew exactly which target to hit. Fuel dumps, ammunition storage, radar installations. They destroyed our ability to fight before engaging our aircraft." The psychological impact on Japanese ground forces was profound. Troops on isolated Pacific islands knew that Enterprise aircraft could appear without warning, destroying supplies, ammunition, and hope of reinforcement. Sergeant Masao Watanabe, stationed on Tarawa, recorded in his diary, "We scan the horizon constantly, dreading the appearance of American aircraft. If they come from Enterprise, we know our defensive positions will be obliterated before the invasion even begins." What few historians discuss is Enterprise's role in thwarting Japan's Kaiten manned torpedo program. The Kaiten, essentially a manned version of the Long Lance torpedo, represented Japan's underwater answer to the kamikaze, with pilots guiding their torpedoes into American ships before detonating. Between November 1944 and August 1945, Enterprise's screening destroyers and aircraft detected and destroyed 11 Kaiten attacks before they could reach their targets. Her radar-equipped aircraft could spot the Kaiten's periscope wake from miles away, allowing destroyers to depth-charge them before they reached attack range. Lieutenant Sekio Nishina, co-inventor of the Kaiten, reviewed attack reports with growing frustration. "Enterprise's defenses are impenetrable," he wrote in April 1945. "Our Kaiten pilots report being detected and attacked before even sighting the target. It's as if Enterprise can see beneath the waves." The loss of 11 Kaiten, each carrying a pilot who had volunteered for certain death, demoralized the program. Japanese submarine commanders began refusing to carry Kaiten on missions where Enterprise was suspected to operate, knowing the human torpedoes would be destroyed before achieving anything. Enterprise pioneered night carrier operations that gave American forces round-the-clock striking capability. By early 1944, she operated specialized night fighter detachments that hunted Japanese aircraft during darkness, a capability Japan never matched. Commander Kaname Harada, a night fighter pilot with the Imperial Navy, described the frustration of facing Enterprise's night fighters. "We owned the night skies in 1942 and 1943, but by 1944, Enterprise launched radar-equipped Hellcats that found us in total darkness. We had no radar, no way to see them coming. They appeared from nowhere, their guns tearing us apart before we even knew they were there." Between January 1944 and August 1945, Enterprise's night fighters destroyed 73 Japanese aircraft, a small number compared to day operations, but devastating because these were aircraft Japanese commanders assumed were safe under cover of darkness. The psychological impact was enormous. Japanese pilots no longer felt secure flying night missions. Captain Minoru Genda, one of Japan's most accomplished aviators and planner of the Pearl Harbor attack, noted in his post-war writings that Enterprise's night operations extended American air superiority to 24 hours, denying us any sanctuary in darkness. This single capability multiplied her effectiveness beyond her actual aircraft strength. Enterprise possessed something Japanese carriers lacked: advanced meteorological forecasting and radar that could penetrate weather systems. This technological advantage allowed her to launch strikes in conditions that grounded Japanese aircraft. The attack on Truk Lagoon in February 1944 demonstrated this capability. Enterprise launched strikes despite heavy cloud cover and rain squalls that Japanese defenders assumed would prevent air operations. Her radar-equipped aircraft navigated through the weather, emerging over Truk to attack surprised Japanese forces who thought themselves safe under the storm. Vice Admiral Chuichi Hara, present at Truk during the attack, later wrote, "Enterprise struck us through weather that should have been impossible to fly through. Their aircraft appeared from clouds like ghosts, attacked with precision, and vanished back into the storm. We couldn't launch our own aircraft in those conditions." Japanese meteorological capabilities remained primitive throughout the war, forcing their carriers to avoid operations during marginal weather. Enterprise embraced bad weather as tactical advantage, using storms as concealment, while her radar allowed strikes that caught Japanese forces unprepared. By mid-1944, Japanese naval planning staff began compiling comprehensive damage assessments comparing various weapons' effectiveness. The classified report, discovered in archives after the war, revealed numbers that shocked even Japanese commanders. USS Enterprise CV-6 Deck 1941, May 1945. 71 ships sunk, 192 vessels damaged, destroyed 911 aircraft, destroyed 23 submarines, sunk, damaged 47 merchant vessels, destroyed 37 airfields, rendered inoperable 180,000 tons of shipping, eliminated atomic bombs, Hiroshima and Nagasaki 1945. 28 ships sunk, damaged, unknown aircraft destroyed, 2 cities destroyed, 200,000 plus civilian casualties. The comparison revealed an uncomfortable truth. While the atomic bombs were devastating strategic weapons that shocked Japan into surrender, Enterprise had systematically dismantled Japanese naval and air power over 4 years of sustained combat. Captain Atsushi Oi, examining these figures post-war, concluded, "The atomic bombs ended the war in days. Enterprise had been ending it ship by ship, aircraft by aircraft, for 1,400 days." If we measure effectiveness by military targets destroyed, Enterprise was the more devastating weapon. Perhaps Enterprise's most significant impact was the disproportionate resources Japan devoted to destroying her. Analysis of Japanese operational orders reveals that commanders allocated 30–40% more aircraft, submarines, and planning effort to operations where Enterprise was believed present. This resource drain had cascading effects. Aircraft held in reserve to strike Enterprise weren't available for other operations. Submarines patrolling her suspected locations couldn't attack supply convoys elsewhere. Reconnaissance aircraft shadowing her couldn't scout other American task forces. Admiral Matome Ugaki calculated that between 1942 and 1945, Japan committed approximately 2,400 aircraft sorties, specifically targeting Enterprise sorties that could have attacked other carriers, supported ground forces, or defended against B-29 raids on the home islands. Enterprise tied down resources far beyond her physical presence, Ugaki wrote. Every commander who planned an operation had to consider, what if Enterprise appears? This question forced us to hold back reserves, disperse our forces, and adopt defensive postures that surrendered initiative to the Americans. When Emperor Hirohito asked his naval advisors how one American ship had survived everything the Imperial Navy could deploy, Admiral Shigetaro Shimada provided a comprehensive answer that went beyond Enterprise's survival to her destructive capability. Majesty, Shimada reported, Enterprise sank more of our ships than we sank of theirs, in many entire campaigns. She destroyed more aircraft than several of our air groups combined. She tied down resources we desperately needed elsewhere, and she did this while surviving everything we threw at her: bombs, torpedoes, kamikaze, submarines. Shimada paused before delivering the final assessment. The atomic bombs destroyed 2 cities in 2 days. Enterprise destroyed our Navy over 4 years. Both were decisive, but Enterprise fought every day of those 4 years, and we never found a way to stop her. The numbers told the story Japan's commanders couldn't fully comprehend during the war. USS Enterprise CV-6 wasn't just a survivor, she was the most destructive single conventional weapon any nation deployed in World War II. More lethal than any battleship, more feared than any submarine, more effective than entire fleets. 20 battle stars, 71 ships sent to the bottom, 911 aircraft obliterated, and the ghost ship sailed home, victorious, having inflicted more damage on Imperial Japan than any other vessel in naval history. The atomic bombs may have ended the war, but Enterprise had already won it. Behind Enterprise's staggering combat record stood 2,919 officers and men who transformed a steel hull into the most feared weapon in the Pacific. But the crew that started the war was not the crew that finished it. Between December 1941 and August 1945, over 8,000 men served aboard Enterprise, with casualties from combat, accidents, and exhaustion constantly requiring replacements. Chief Petty Officer John Mad Jack Kirkwood served in Enterprise's damage control parties from Pearl Harbor to Okinawa. His handwritten journal, discovered decades later, revealed the human cost behind the statistics. "We lost 14 men today when the kamikaze hit," Kirkwood wrote on May 14, 1945. "But within 3 hours we had the fires out and were recovering aircraft again. The Japs think we're ghosts. Maybe we are. I don't remember what it's like to sleep more than 4 hours straight." Enterprise's damage control parties became legendary throughout the fleet. Other ships' crews trained by studying Enterprise's techniques for fighting fires, containing flooding, and maintaining operations despite catastrophic damage. The secret wasn't supernatural, it was drilling, redundancy, and crews who simply refused to let their ship die. Commander Joseph F. Fox, Enterprise's damage control officer during 1943 to 1944, estimated his teams conducted damage control drills over 400 times during his tenure. "We drilled until men could navigate the ship blindfolded," Fox recalled post-war. "We drilled until they could fight fires in their sleep. When bombs hit us at Santa Cruz, my men responded instantly because they'd fought that exact fire 100 times in training." Enterprise's air groups cycled through over 1,200 pilots during the war, with 178 killed in action and 216 wounded. But those who survived became the most experienced naval aviators in history, many with combat records exceeding 50 missions. Lieutenant Commander William Earl Gallagher flew 63 combat missions from Enterprise's deck between 1942 and 1944. His logbook documented attacks on 14 different Japanese ships, including the carrier Zuiho at Philippine Sea and the battleship Musashi at Leyte Gulf. "We weren't just sinking ships," Gallagher later explained. "We were destroying Japan's ability to wage war. Every tanker we sank meant their fighters couldn't fly. Every transport we hit meant their soldiers couldn't eat. Every carrier we destroyed meant we controlled the skies." The learning curve was steep and deadly. Ensign Thomas J. Murray joined Enterprise's air group in February 1943 and died in his third mission attacking Japanese positions on Rabaul. His wingman, Lieutenant Donald Gordon, survived the war with 71 missions and wrote, "Tommy died learning what took the rest of us months to master how to press an attack through anti-aircraft fire so intense it looked like a solid wall of steel. The men who survived became the best pilots in any navy, anywhere." The coordinated dive bomber and torpedo bomber attacks that devastated Japanese carriers at Philippine Sea originated from Enterprise's experienced squadron commanders, who'd learned through trial and error and heavy losses what worked and what got pilots killed. For Japanese naval officers, Enterprise represented something beyond a military target. She became a personal affront to their honor and capability. Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, after losing the Battle of Philippine Sea, reportedly told his staff, "We are considered the elite of the Imperial Navy. We fly the best aircraft, command the finest ships. Yet one American carrier has defeated us at every encounter. How do we explain this to the Emperor?" The obsession with destroying Enterprise manifested in bizarre ways. Lieutenant Zenji Abe, shot down in 1944 and captured, told American interrogators that his squadron had a pool betting on who would score the hit that finally sank Enterprise. "We had been told she was destroyed at Eastern Solomons," Abe explained. "Then again at Santa Cruz, then again at Rabaul. Each time she reappeared, we told ourselves the next time would be different, but it never was." Captain Tamechi Hara, commanding destroyer Shigure, encountered Enterprise's aircraft during multiple engagements. His post-war memoir described the moment his lookouts spotted Enterprise aircraft approaching. "My crew became silent, almost resigned. We had fought American carriers before and survived, but Enterprise was different. Her pilots attacked with precision that bordered on prescience, as if they knew exactly where we would maneuver, exactly when we would be most vulnerable." The psychological burden extended beyond naval officers to the common sailors and airmen who faced Enterprise in combat. Petty Officer Haruo Yoshino, serving aboard cruiser Suzuya, wrote to his family in April 1944, "We heard Enterprise is operating near us. The men are nervous, checking and rechecking equipment. It's foolish to fear one ship, but she seems to appear wherever we are weakest, striking before we can respond. Some men say she is protected by American gods. Others say her crew are demons who cannot be killed. I don't know what to believe anymore." When news of the Hiroshima bombing reached Japanese naval headquarters on August 6, 1945, Commander Masatake Okumiya, the intelligence officer who'd spent years tracking Enterprise, was among the first to analyze the weapon's naval impact. His classified assessment, discovered in post-war archives, provides a stark comparison. The atomic bomb destroyed Hiroshima's port facilities and sank 5 vessels in the harbor. The weapon is terrible beyond comprehension, and its psychological impact will end this war. But from a purely naval perspective, Enterprise inflicted greater damage to our fleet than this new weapon. The atomic bomb struck one target with absolute devastation. Enterprise struck 71 targets, with persistent determination. Okumiya's assessment continued with calculations that haunted Japanese naval leadership. If we calculate the resources required to replace what Enterprise destroyed 71 ships, 911 aircraft, 37 airfields, 180,000 tons of merchant shipping, the total exceeds our nation's entire shipbuilding and aircraft production capacity for 1,943. One American carrier inflicted damage requiring more than a year of total industrial output to replace. The comparison became more poignant when considering casualties. The atomic bombs killed approximately 200,000 Japanese civilians immediately, or from radiation effects. Enterprise's attacks killed an estimated 15,000 to 20,000 Japanese military personnel, sailors, pilots, soldiers on transport ships, and airfield personnel. Both weapons were devastating, but Enterprise's impact fell almost entirely on military targets over sustained campaigns rather than civilian populations in instantaneous attacks. Admiral Chester Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief Pacific Fleet, understood this distinction when he wrote in his post-war report, "The atomic bombs shortened the war and saved countless American lives. But Enterprise won the war at sea, destroying Japanese naval power ship by ship, aircraft by aircraft, through 4 years of sustained combat operations unmatched in naval history." Enterprise's last combat missions off Okinawa demonstrated how far American carrier operations had evolved since Pearl Harbor. By April 1945, she operated as part of Task Force 58, the most powerful naval force ever assembled, with 16 carriers, 8 battleships, and dozens of cruisers and destroyers. But even within this massive armada, Enterprise remained unique. Her air group flew 1,840 combat sorties during the Okinawa campaign, more than any other carrier in the task force. Her pilots destroyed 26 Japanese aircraft in air combat and an additional 67 on the ground. Her bombers sank 3 cargo vessels, damaged 2 destroyers, and destroyed ammunition dumps, fuel depots, and radar installations across Okinawa. Lieutenant Commander Jackson Arnold, leading Enterprise's bombing squadron during Okinawa, later described the operational tempo. "We flew 4 missions some days. Launch at dawn, strike Japanese positions, return to rearm and refuel, launch again by mid-morning. The ship's crew worked miracles keeping us flying. I saw ordnance men loading bombs in the dark, working by flashlight during general quarters, getting aircraft ready for the next strike while Japanese aircraft attacked the task force." This relentless pace took its toll. Enterprise's crew was exhausted after 4 years of nearly continuous combat operations. Maintenance issues that would have been minor in 1942 became serious problems on a ship that had absorbed bomb hits, torpedo near misses, kamikaze strikes, and the stress of launching over 20,000 combat sorties. When Lieutenant Shunsuke Tomiyasu's kamikaze struck Enterprise on May 14, 1945, penetrating her forward flight deck and destroying the elevator, Captain Grover Hall faced a decision. Enterprise could continue operating with reduced capacity, recovering aircraft on her aft deck. But the damage was severe enough to justify withdrawal for repairs. Hall chose withdrawal, and Enterprise departed for Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. She would never return to combat. The war ended while she was still under repair, and the Grey Ghost's fighting days were over. Japanese naval officers studying their defeat in the war's aftermath consistently identified Enterprise as a pivotal factor not just for her combat record, but for what she represented about American capabilities. Captain Atsushi Oi, writing the official Japanese naval history of the Pacific War, devoted an entire chapter to Enterprise. His analysis concluded, "We underestimated 3 things about America: their industrial capacity, their technological innovation, and their determination. Enterprise embodied all 3. She was well-built, constantly upgraded with new technology, and manned by crews who refused to accept defeat regardless of damage suffered." Admiral Arleigh Burke, who served as a destroyer squadron commander during the war before becoming Chief of Naval Operations, offered perhaps the most succinct comparison. The atomic bomb was America's most powerful weapon. Enterprise was America's most effective weapon. There's a difference. Power wins battles. Effectiveness wins wars. The British Admiralty's post-war assessment noted, HMS Illustrious, our most decorated carrier, earned 14 battle honours. Enterprise earned 20 battle stars while operating in conditions far more challenging than the Mediterranean. The Americans built a carrier that could absorb punishment that would have sunk our vessels, and they manned her with crews trained to standards that exceeded our own. By August 1945, when Enterprise's combat record was finalized, the statistics told a story unprecedented in naval warfare. Combat sorties, 20,933 missions flown from her deck combat days, 1,399 days of continuous operations, battle stars, 2, 0 more than any, U.S. warship, Presidential Unit Citation, 1, Navy Unit Commendation, 1, damage inflicted. 71 ships sunk, 192 vessels damaged, destroyed 911 aircraft destroyed air, and ground 3 submarines sunk, damaged 37 airfields, rendered inoperable 180,000 tons, merchant shipping destroyed, damage sustained, 3 bomb hits Eastern Solomons, 2 bomb hits Santa Cruz, 2 kamikaze strikes, 1,944, 1,945. Numerous near misses and shrapnel damage. 178 aircrew killed in action, 216 aircrew wounded, 103 ships company killed, 257 ships company wounded. These numbers represented more than statistics. They represented 15,000 to 20,000 Japanese military personnel killed, hundreds of millions of dollars in destroyed equipment, and incalculable damage to Japanese operational capability and morale. The ultimate irony of Enterprise's career is that Japan couldn't sink her with every weapon they possessed, but the US Navy scrapped her in 1958 for $561,333. Veterans groups fought desperately to preserve her as a memorial, but budget constraints and the Navy's focus on building new carriers doomed their efforts. Admiral William Halsey, who commanded Enterprise during many of her most desperate battles, called her scrapping a crime against history. He wrote to the Secretary of the Navy, "Enterprise saved this nation when we had nothing else to fight with. She earned the right to eternal preservation, not a scrapyard." Japanese naval veterans expressed similar sentiments. In a 1960 ceremony honoring fallen sailors, Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, who had tried to destroy Enterprise at Philippine Sea, stated, "I regret that America did not preserve Enterprise. She was a worthy opponent who defeated us fairly. Future generations should remember such ships, both for victory and for how well they were fought." The Grey Ghost faded into history, but her legacy lived on. The nuclear carrier USS Enterprise CV-65, commissioned in 1961, carried her name and spirit. When that ship was decommissioned in 2012, the Navy immediately announced the name would be carried forward to CVN-80, ensuring Enterprise would sail again. But for the Japanese naval officers who fought against CV-6, no successor could match the original. Captain Tameichi Hara, in his final interview before death in 1980, was asked what Allied weapon he feared most during the war. "The atomic bomb was terrible," Hara replied. "But we only faced it twice. We faced Enterprise for 4 years. She was always there, always surviving, always destroying. If I must name the weapon that defeated Japan at sea, it was not the atomic bomb, it was the Grey Ghost. 71 ships, more than both atomic bombs combined. And the ship that inflicted that damage survived everything Japan could throw at her, sailing home victorious, while Japan's navy lay at the bottom of the Pacific. That is the measure of USS Enterprise CV-6, not just what she survived, but what she destroyed. The most effective weapon in naval history. On October 27, 1945, USS Enterprise steamed into New York Harbor for Navy Day celebrations. Over 500,000 Americans lined the waterfront to glimpse the Grey Ghost, the ship that refused to die. She anchored near the recently surrendered German U-boat U-505 and Japanese submarine I-400, trophies of a war won at terrible cost. Admiral Chester Nimitz stood on Enterprise's flight deck that day and told the assembled crowd something remarkable. "This ship did more to win the Pacific War than any other. Not the Missouri, where Japan surrendered, not the Indianapolis, which delivered the atomic bomb components. This ship Enterprise killed Japan's navy before the atomic bombs ever fell. The irony was lost on no one. The weapons that ended the war, Little Boy and Fat Man, were celebrated as ultimate victory symbols. But the weapon that dismantled Japanese military power piece by piece, battle by battle, for 1,399 consecutive days, somehow became just another surplus carrier destined for scrapping. 71 ships sunk versus 28. The comparison seems simple until you understand what it represents. The atomic bombs struck in seconds, devastating, final, absolute. Enterprise struck over 4 years, persistent, relentless, unstoppable. Both approaches ended Japanese resistance, but only one destroyed Japan's ability to fight. Every ship Enterprise sank removed trained crews, experienced officers, irreplaceable equipment from Japan's order of battle. Every aircraft her pilots destroyed meant one less threat to American forces. Every airfield she cratered meant Japanese reinforcements couldn't arrive. Every submarine she sank meant American supply convoys reached their destinations safely. The atomic bombs shocked Japan into surrender. Enterprise had already defeated them. Perhaps the Grey Ghost's greatest victory wasn't any single battle, but what she proved about conventional warfare waged with exceptional skill, determination, and courage. In an age that celebrated superweapons and ultimate destruction, Enterprise demonstrated that sustained excellence matters more than overwhelming force. She proved that well-trained crews operating good equipment with intelligent tactics could achieve results that exceeded theoretical calculations. The Japanese had super battleships Yamato and Musashi, the most powerful surface combatants ever built. Both sank under American air attacks. They had the finest carrier pilots in 1941 by 1944. Enterprise's experienced aviators slaughtered them. They had numerical superiority in 1942. Enterprise operated alone and still won. She survived because her crew refused to let her die. She destroyed 71 ships because those same crews refused to stop fighting. 20 battle stars, 911 aircraft destroyed. And through it all, Enterprise sailed home victorious. The atomic bombs ended World War II, but USS Enterprise CV-6 won it one ship, one battle, one impossible survival at a time. That's not just naval history. That's the definition of a legend that refused to die, even after they cut her apart for scrap. The Grey Ghost lives on, not in museums, but in the simple truth. She sank more ships than humanity's most powerful weapons, and no amount of atomic fire can erase that fact from history.